think we need to do that. It's too hot now.
Right.
Well, now the sun's out, that's something. But boiling in it.
Qui verso open.
I went home to the same. Sí. Ya, porque primero estaba en la que no lo dejaban subir. Ya, y que van a ver si... I was very, very disappointed. Because, I could say, when I got super... Yeah, so Day3 got ready today, or? We have no special event. We have planned. You could rather say stop when you get there. Who's coaching plan? I saw the photos of the brother. Morning. Yeah, we've been outside in the past few days, but the wind yesterday and tomorrow out the rain. Yeah, now down here it's not pretty close. Oh, okay. Well, the show was but they don't check you out. So, well, it's perfect. Hey, was just getting shot. Yeah. Let's do it inside. Well, I guess it's an island. Yeah, we just been outside. But here's the I think four goes yes, but this is so we did Friday about yeah, it's the first time we've tried it. Because normally that's just taken on staff. But because of the regulations, it's technically good to do that. So that's why I did it. Let's do it. Something else in my answer. But it's amazing. Breakfast. Take your arm off, but also like actually rather normally the church but only basically just common practice. Yeah. So so uncertainty. Uncertainty about at the end of the day, it's always tax. Because obviously it's actually really supposed to be playing close context. I think it's very yeah. But if next close to and so it's basically when you don't something you don't what else do you have that maximize I know very little about it. Well, hopefully, the nice thing is I get a chance to ask questions about everything. Somebody not really said things. Yeah. So Estela, we are here at home. So head office of the commercial side from Suez down. Yachts. You can show. Last night, you watch out, play, checking out, musicians who just arrive, reggae, let's play inside the sound, and then they stop playing, and then start playing out, so they're in a plane to take off. But almost people out dancing, drinking, some people guests singing. That's how we roll. That's how we roll. Next year, just put it in.
Did you stay to the end yesterday? 10 o'clock? My God. When I left, you could hear the radio at the top there.
It was very
The whole showground was echoing around, so people who were still standing outside, most stands were closed, the ones that were still open, it was really just chilling into the reggae
It
music.
was so nice.
The band was very good, wasn't it? I thought the band were excellent.
It was so good. I sent a message this morning to the guy. I was like, thanks for last night. You know, let's stay. Super good.
So they must have been having fun then if they played on.
¿Dónde me siento? ¿Dónde está filmando esto?
Yeah, well,
Right out.
well, they reduced capacity for the show. Also, shooting times. Normally, 8. But I was with a very long queue outside. Most of the No.
Yeah.
No.
Only Nice and nice.
Oh,
Nice. Well, okay. It's not so. They're related.
Good morning, everybody. A couple of minutes for our guests to find the place. We'll start off. If everybody doesn't yet have a coffee, that's on demand behind the bar. I hope you all had some breakfast, and if not, just please help yourself. Welcome, everybody. Morning, my name is James Van Brecht. I work for Estela Super Yacht Agency. I write the Hawaii Yachting Itineraries Guide, which should be available to pick up if you don't already have a copy on your way out. Also look after things like social media and newsletters, etc. So that's me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If it's the first time here, the bathrooms are just down the stairs behind the outside bar. And if you wouldn't mind just putting your phones on silent. Thank you. So, this morning we're talking about personal finance, investment planning, tax planning, such things for seafarers. So let me just introduce our panel for this morning. To my right here we have my big brother's talking about how Susan Worthington has been an independent financial advisor in Mallorca since 1987, helping expats with banking and investment planning. She has no affiliation with any particular investment service provider, but has a very strong local reputation for sound impartial advice. When we look at Sally Kingston, it has lived in Mallorca for about 30 years and has been in real estate for about 15 years. 12 years ago, she identified a specific requirement that captains and crew have in acquiring and managing properties and founded Kingsburg Property. Since then, she's developed partnerships with local mortgage and savings specialists, OVB, and legal practice, Buffet Morel, to offer a full financial and legal support service tailored especially to seafarers. Kingsburg has an office which is located inside STP with her colleague Francesco Piombo, specialising in crew accommodation and property search. And last but not least, Tom Worthington is a big pardon, who's in my file, has been involved in financial products for about 10 years, as at first an independent financial advisor, and since 2015 on the other side of the fence as an investment manager. So Tom is European manager for TAM Asset Management, which manages assets for private clients, insurance companies, pension schemes, trust companies, and charities. So that's our panel this morning. And the first thing to do is to just thank all the people that made our events this week possible. So we just tell you who they are, we should be thanking. This is the Port Authority of Melilla, which is the Spanish city on the southern coast of Morocco. Swiss Ocean Yacht Management, who are specialists in operational and admin elements of running a yacht, as well as project management on new build and refit. Day3 Yachting is the largest super yacht agency and charter agent in Turkey, which operates from 7 locations from Istanbul to Antalya. including their own shipyarding project. Molen Yachts is a leading builder of semi-custom super yachts in the 30 to 50 metre bracket in the Netherlands. Coral Marine, our colleagues in Ibiza, which is, in our opinion, undoubtedly the best agency in Ibiza, so we collaborate with them closely. Tema Petroli is one of, in our group of companies, which is a fuel and lube supplier with its own stations around the Med and a worldwide supply network. Astilleros de Mallorca, which you will all be familiar, of course. Tax Marine is a specialist marine tax and customs consultancy in Barcelona. Naughty Paints, which celebrates its 50th anniversary this year, and anybody based here will know Naughty Paints. Kingsburg Crew Support and Property Services, they specialise in property and crew accommodation, doing so for almost 20 years. Alcadesa Marina, located in La Linea, next to Gibraltar, which is probably the best marina in that region, should you ever be going that way. TAM, the London-based investment manager, which works with trustees and management companies, as well as private investors, with offices in Mallorca and Mauritius, as well as London. Antigua Yacht Club Marina and Resort in Falmouth Harbour in Antigua. Argentario Yacht Services, a super yacht agency in Puerto Santo Stefano. And last but not least, AYSS, which is the Global Super Yacht Services Agency network, of which Estela is a proud member, which exists not to put clients into a commercial loop, but to actually raise standards in an industry which can be a little bit shady in parts. So that's the introduction. Here is the commercial break. So we're here to talk about personal financial planning, which touches, of course, on all areas of investment, banking, currency management. Ultimately, it's a conversation about tax, but we don't have any specialist tax expert among us. It's probably a good thing, because that's obviously personal in any case. So let's kick things off. Susan, I'll start with you if you don't mind. Obviously, you've been in Mallorca for a long time, dealing with crew and nomads and whatever else we call them now for a long time. What trends are you seeing in the last few years which is changing the landscape? Clearly, there's an element of taxation which is closing, reporting standards. So the idea of having your income not tax paid, receiving gross, and putting it where you like without anybody having to report it, is changing. So how's that affecting what you're doing?
It's a big change for everybody, because it was perfectly normal to be nomadic, and so long as you were careful where you spent your days and you spent them outside of any jurisdiction for more than 6 months or 183 days, that no longer applies, unfortunately. And it was almost overnight when the CRS, the Common Reporting Standards, came into force. And for the yachting industry, it was a huge impact, because it's worrying. You suddenly announce that you're resident somewhere. Some people went to be resident long enough, and it was a big change. And that's where we were, as financial advisors, able to help people and guide people who to go and talk to, who are the tax specialists and who can help you. And then it's about rearranging your finances so that they are tax effective for the jurisdiction that you're declaring your resident in. So it was a big change, and it still is, it's still ongoing. And it depends where people settle and have their families, and children go to school. A lot of factors that when you're busy working and you're away at sea all the time, you're not up to date with what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask the same question to Sally. Obviously, you come largely from the property side of things. How is this affecting the trend in terms of having to domicile, having to declare? How is this affecting your segment?
Well, most of the yachting community are, even if they are not, then most of them are non-residents in Spain, Mallorca. For buying a property, it doesn't really affect too much, because a non-resident is a non-resident, and a non-resident mortgage is a non-resident mortgage. The main thing that affected the mortgage was the new mortgage law of 2019, when they stipulated that anybody non-resident who earned your money in a non-European currency, pound, drachma, anything, then you could change your mortgage to that currency anytime during the life of the mortgages, which scared off the banks a little, and the mortgages are slightly different for the non-European people. Lots of the banks only offer variable to them, but there's still plenty of banks offering a fixed rate. If, as Susan mentioned, if say somebody is at sea with their family and their children are here, then they do have to start being resident because they see the fact that your wife and your children are here, therefore you should be resident here. But as regards to purchasing, it hasn't really changed very much at all for the property. People are still looking for investments, mainly in town, to then rent out, or they're looking for a little house or a finca in the country to live. That seems to be the progress. First the apartment, then the house. So I wouldn't say property purchasing and selling hasn't changed too much. Things that have changed more has been with the new mortgage law of 2019.
This is a Spanish mortgage.
Yes, Spanish mortgage law of 2019, yes. Especially that clause 20, which says you can change your mortgage into the currency of where you reside, which I've never done anybody taking advantage of or even know about it. But it's something the banks have to be careful of in case they lost out on the exchange rate.
Okay, yeah, I come from a city background a long time ago in a previous life, and I had colleagues with Japanese yen mortgages, and they used to arbitrage their homes and their incomes and their bonuses. So it's interesting to know that's actually still possible. That's now possible.
Now possible, but this is why some of the banks, will only give a variable interest mortgage to people who do not earn their money in Europe, or people who are resident in England or South Africa or Australia, people who are resident in a non-Europe country.
Okay, that's interesting. I'd like to explore that a bit further. Tom, can I ask the same of you? Obviously, as an asset manager, you're probably not seen as being active on the retail side, but you do have retail products. So perhaps you'd like to explain a little bit about what exactly TAM is about, what you do, and how you work with seafarers, again, to expats, all that.
So basically, TAM is, as James said, was set up in London. We opened the New York office about 2.5 years ago. We're down in Port Adriano, and being financial services or IFA, I worked with a lot of yacht crew. I had about 400, 500 crew that were clients of mine, and the one big predominant thing that I saw going into TAM was the fact that there was no regular savings options for crew. There were options, in my opinion, not great ones. They weren't in the interest of the client, so we went ahead and set up Seafarers.com, which is a product. It's an investment management product that you can go into 5 different risk levels. We've got ESG, so ethically minded people can have more of an option, more of a stay as well. And it's something that's got no penalties. You can go into, you can come out of it, you can put as much money in as you want, take it out when you want without having to face a withdrawal charge or anything like that. So it's almost the same as bank account, if you like, through. And this was the one area that we really, I thought we were lacking in financial products. And we've launched it about a year ago, which wasn't the best time to launch it because of COVID, everyone locked down, everyone was a bit unsure about the jobs. However, now we've really seen a real upturn in people starting to invest and starting to save for the future.
So it's a retail product. It's available to anybody. Is it regardless of domicile, nationality, of occupation, is it only in euros? Is it available in multi-currency?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's available at the moment in sterling and euros. Dollars are coming soon, also Australian dollars. It's available to, it's mainly aimed at seafarers because it's not what we call a tax wrapper Seafarers, but Sue will tell you more about. It's directly invested with us, so it doesn't matter where you pay tax. We don't take any tax off them. We don't take any VAT off them. It's down to whoever invests in it to be responsible for their own tax. So it's geared towards seafarers that way, because if you force them to be taxed into a tax authority, such as Spain, such as France, wherever they reside, then it limits their options. Whereas we just leave it completely open for them.
Okay, so it's, as ever, the onus to declare is always on the individual, of course. I was going to say, in all the investment products that are available and the banking options, we did try to get one of the Revolut sort of transfer advisors, they're called now, to come and join us, but we couldn't persuade them on a Sunday morning. It was also attempted to get a cryptocurrency expert on the panel, but we probably don't have enough hours in the day to discuss crypto. So looking at more vanilla investment products, so perhaps you'd like to talk a bit about what sort of vehicles clients are favouring, or particularly mobile people are favouring, and why specifically are certain products suited to seafarers and such like.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my clients have been, because I've been working here for a considerable time, is more sort of retired people who are lump sum investors, as we call them. They have lump sums from their retirements, their pensions, that they invest or inherit money. But more recently, especially when Tom became a financial advisor, initially before he went to onto investment management, we did see that there was a lack of opportunity here for investment advice for, say, for the yachting industry, for seafarers. And one of the things that when Tom left and went to this new company, he said he identified that there was this gap in the market. So it brought me into the line of thinking as well, because I didn't actually give advice, because I didn't agree with the advice that was being given before on locking seafarers up into savings plans that were difficult to get out of, that had high charges, that had locked them up for 20, 30 years. So the company I was with sort of avoided them. And now this new savings, we've been able to, we're looking now to move more actively into my company, which is Beacon Global Wealth Management. We're looking more to being able to help seafarers, because we now have been appointed agents of town. And it sounds a bit incestuous, but it's just there has been this huge gap in the market. And to be able to, if you're a UK resident, the first thing a financial advisor would offer you is an ISA, because an ISA is a very flexible investment. It's tax efficient, it's easy pay in, pull out, do what you like with it. And this is more along the lines of an ISA. So for us in the financial services, it's a godsend, to be honest.
And obviously for non-UK people here, an ISA is UK specific. No?
Yeah, it's UK specific. It's only for UK residents. If you have an ISA and you've left the UK, then you're not really supposed to retain that because of Brexit now. So these are all the things that you need to sit down with an advisor, if you have already got existing investments, to make sure what you have got, dependent on where your tax jurisdiction is, what is appropriate for you, because it can be a minefield and is different when you leave the country that you've been living in and you set up somewhere else.
Or set up nowhere.
Okay.
That's changing too, of course, the ability to set up nowhere, to fall out of all tax nets. Am I right in thinking that that's changed
That's right.
in the past few months or a couple of years?
It has been ongoing for a few years now. But the last couple of years, you have to have tax residence. You cannot be nomadic anymore, unfortunately. And it is, if you're caught up in this trap, depending on where you are, where you spend most of your time, it depends where your boat is, where you're based, where your anchorage is, and it is dependent on how long you spend in that area. it depends where your boat's registered. There's so many factors to take into account. It is necessary to take advice on it.
Just a silly, possibly a very silly question, but I genuinely don't know whether there is such a thing, but can seafarers reside in the flag state of the vessel?
Yeah, you need to take advice on this again, because it depends on the number of days it spends there. It depends if it's travelling. You do need to take advice on it, and it depends where your family are as well. So there's lots of things to take into
It
consideration.
seems tempting to me as somebody in ignorance that if I'm on a Cayman flag boat, it's very tempting to take the Cayman Islands as my residence.
Yes, you could. But however, if you've got family and children at school here in Spain, for example, then your social economic interest is here in Spain. Like Sally mentioned before, and it does affect your status. And it's very important to take advice on it.
Thank you.
I'm just looking from Sam's point of view as well. If you're on the Seafarers sailor, the flag state only actually comes into effect 12 miles offshore. So unless the boat's 12 miles offshore and then that's where you live in, the flag state's because if you think of it on the way that if you come into climb on board, why does it go and come on board here? So you're in Spain. So it depends where the boat is physically. And the flag state only comes in once you're in international waters.
Okay. Sally, I've got a tricky one for you. I'm going to try and be very...
All the tricky ones for me.
Well, the thing is, obviously, when it comes to financial planning, property planning, tax planning, it strays into the legal areas and it's very personal and it can be quite technical. And of course, we're trying to keep this as broad as possible. But if I give you a real life example of, I'll try to be discreet. A family member of mine is a seafarer, has been for a long time, as a captain, has been earning untaxed money for an awfully long time, which sat in the ether, but finally put it into bricks and mortar in Mallorca and built a house. So, this is all fine, except of course there is a spouse and there are children here. He's not here, technically. And now there's a divorce coming. So, let's keep it broad. What should a seafarer who's been stashing money away offshore for a long time, who now wants to decide he or she has to have a base somewhere, or wants to have a base somewhere, what should they be doing about planning their lives in terms of trying to regularize their income or their assets?
That really is, I would put them on to a tax expert, if these people or the tax consultant in the lawyer's office that I work with. I do know some about taxes, but it's not my speciality. Property mortgages and things like that are more my speciality. But as Susan said, all these things have been changed, not the one change from day to another. It's been a gradual change. They started at least a few years ago, started waiting outside the private schools, watching for the mums bringing their children to school in the Porsches and the Ferraris, etc. And they're not tax residents.
Following them home.
Yeah, probably, yes, to see what type of house they live in. The husband's probably flying to it from England, Sweden, Germany, and they're not tax resident here, but they should be because their family base is here. But as it comes to divorce as well, you need a different type. You need a tax lawyer and a family lawyer. And all these services I can't provide. Don't the taxes, but jointly with the lawyer's office I use for putting away, they actually have a tax lawyer there, and they use the family lawyer when they help with separations or divorces. Because I know a couple of people that live on that is a difficult situation. I'm not quite sure if he invested in the property X number of years ago and what tax effect that would have on now with the divorce. That you need an expert. You need an expert in that. But we can point them in the right direction for the right people to use.
Okay. Does anybody here have any either specific or general questions for the panel while you have them here? This is your chance. You can always find them afterwards, of course. I'm always happy to put you in touch if you don't catch them after this session. But if you have any burning questions in general terms, everybody here is anonymous, we don't know who you all are, so feel free to speak openly. But if you have any questions, just put your arm up, we'll get the microphone to you. Anyone brave enough? Super. We have a question.
Hi, good morning. I would like to know if you decide to buy a property here in New York and you are bringing money offshore, once you bring that money into the country, would you then need to provide a tax clearance certificate to show where the money has come from?
Normally, when you bring any money in, whether it's from offshore or from England, the lawyers will ask you to fill in a form stating whether the money's come from wages, savings, things like this. This is getting a little bit more control than it is, and in the future probably will be even more control. But right now, for purchases of property, as you are non-resident, we're not really seeing many problems with the money coming in. I suppose it also depends on which country as well. From which country, I'm sure, can depend on how strict it is. But a lot of the banks will just take, some of the banks I work with will take direct transfers from your bank standard, man or whatever, into them, and some of them will ask a few more questions. It does depend on the bank as well. But right now, if you're purchasing property and you are non-resident, we're not having much trouble with that. I don't know if you, Tom, have seen any type of thing with people bringing money in from offshore.
It depends on the bank manager. So someone like Sally would be able to work with because they know the bank managers actually understand international crime. Whereas we've had in the past bank managers trying to tell us Luxembourg's not in the EU, which obviously is ridiculous. But you know, go to small local banks, they might not be as helpful as someone like Seafarers, for example.
Yeah, the banks that we work with, they used to doing sales for crew and mortars for crew for quite a few many years, so they are used to our clients and how they work and how they earn the money. So they are used to that. As I said, things are a little bit more controlled now, but they are used to how our clients earn their money, so it's not unusual for them.
So we are Rockies, and we've decided that we, after many years at sea, we would like to move to New York. Okay? This is a predicament that a few people are finding themselves in at the moment. And you mentioned that when you transfer the money, as long as you're non-resident, then it should be okay, as long as you can provide or fill out the form that says, you know, this money wasn't obtained by the But you mentioned as long as you're a non-resident, so in the process of becoming a resident here, as well as looking at buying property, how would you suggest the best way to move forward with regard to it? In terms of a crew member has now decided to move on land, they base themselves here, how should they go about doing that process in the best order?
We do have a few clients who are either fully resident or resident with the 60,000 euros exemption, who still bring their money in from Standard and other offshore banking. Standard seems to be one of the biggest ones for the yachting community. And there's not seen any trouble with that so far. That's a good question for me to look into. Because up until now, we've had no problem. They've had no problem. Because they'll ask you to prepare how you earned it. Because you will now, once you become resident, full resident or part resident, start paying the taxes here. You're bringing, that was money you earned before. But it is a good question that needs looking into. Well, do you have any more on that?
I think it'd be a good idea to talk to an advisor before,
Yeah.
before you make any big moves in your life, especially when it pertains to tax or anything like that. Is talk to an advisor before you actually make them, because the implications can normally be drawn out quite clearly. However, if you make that decision without advice, it can get in a sticky situation.
I agree.
think it's fair to say that Spain will take their 40% of whatever opportunity they get. So tread carefully, I think, is the advice. Nothing without speaking to a socialist. Sue, I know you mentioned when we met before that I know you have no special affiliation in general, but of course you work with TAM. You mentioned also you work with Standard Bank. I think most South Africans are very familiar with, seem to be very familiar with the Standard Bank Seafarer account. I'm also in the various crew forums that give Standard Bank quite a hard time. I don't know why. We have, at Estela, we have no affiliation, not here to promote any specific financial provider or products. But in general terms, what does a Seafarer account look like, and in what way is it special?
The Seafarer account, as Sally said before, Standard Bank are probably one of the most popular for the seafarers because they've got this unique arrangement for seafarers. It's quite an expensive arrangement, if you like, but it's a very convenient one. It's very practical, and the service they give is very good as well. So they do focus a lot on you guys, which I think is good. If you can go to a bank that's familiar with what you do, how you do it, to set up an account is easy. You can do it on your captain's letter. You don't need to have a residence as such to prove to get one, so you know you've got someone you can put your salary into. So it is a very convenient, as I say, and it's specifically designed for your guys in mind. So most people tend to recommend Standard Bank. We've got Sheena here, who she's in the Isle of Man. So the Seafarer account is established through the Isle of Man. It is offshore as such, although the Isle of Man is an independent government, if you like, but is sort of part of the UK. So it's independent. So it sort of sits when you bring the money in and out of it. Some people will ask why it's coming from the Isle of Man. Why did you have an Isle of Man bank? Some of my clients get asked this, and quite easy. It's easy to say because you can have an account or a currency that you wish to have it in. You don't necessarily want to keep all your money in Spain because you should diversify. You should spread your money across banks. So to bring it all into Spain isn't always good advice anyway. So it's quite legitimate for you to have an offshore bank and to bring money in from an offshore bank. You're perfectly entitled to do it. If you have a bank account in the Isle of Man, however, and you are a Spanish resident, then Spain will know about it because the Isle of Man have to report anyone that's an account holder. So it's an automatic exchange of information. But if you're here, you're paying your taxes here, there's nothing to worry about, and it makes moving money around much easier if you already know about it anyway. So once you're established, it's quite easy and practical way to do things.
Is that also covered by a deposit protection scheme?
Yes, it is. It is. So you've got your usual 75,000 for sterling and 100,000 for euros. It's got the same protection.
There's been quite a lot of chatter on the forums about people getting locked out of their Standard Bank accounts, out of their Monzo accounts, out of their Revolut accounts. I've been a TransferWise fan for a long time and a user. Before you had to give your tax reference or your residential number, whatever it is, that banks and all these platforms now require. So the net seems to be closing in terms of being able to hover around, not be on the radar anywhere. But what's going on with these accounts being locked? Do you know anything about this? Have you had clients affected?
Yes, but I don't know. It's, as we were saying before, everything is tightening up. Day by day it's tightening up. And this source of funds is due diligence, and it goes under money laundering, it goes under terrorism, it goes under, it's the same thing. Not paying taxes on your money is a prisonable offence now, they're saying, but it's not a serious.
Unless you're Amazon or Apple.
Yeah, of course, that's legitimate, isn't it? So it's all tightening down. So to actually have this time now to arrange your affairs and to decide where you want to be a resident and then go about it as you guys are planning to do, and to make the arrangements and to get everything so you can sleep at night, so you've got peace of mind. And then you can find out where's the best place and how to do, like Tom said, take advice. It is best to take advice while you're thinking about things before you actually do something. There are plenty of people, James is in this, he's got sponsors here and tax advisors in Barcelona, and, there are plenty of people here as well. So just take advice, it's worth spending that bit of money for your peace of mind, and then you know which direction to go in. I don't think we've ever looked, and I know a lot of people I work with use transfer wise and wise now, and it's worked well, it's convenient, and that's very cost effective as well.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. As regards declaring the tax residency for your money, it's not just about paying the taxes, as Susan touched on, it's about money laundering. There was a huge money laundering scam on the mainland several years ago, and a lot of banks got hooked up with this and the money laundering. It was huge in Russia, it was absolutely huge. They were building whole villages. It was all about money laundering, drugs, human trafficking, things like this. So a lot of it is all to do with money laundering. This is why they wanted to declare, even like the Seafarers tax in England, which is the ideal passport for the seafarers. It is a lot also to do about money laundering. The banks get into huge trouble if the court receiving money from which has been laundered or is allowed to be laundered by purchasing the property. So that's one of the biggest schemes of money laundering is to buy property.
And what hoops are you now having to jump through to facilitate people with coming in with lump sums, or perhaps offshore salaries being paid in foreign currencies?
The main thing is not the bank just ask for your tax resident. They ask for, no, they don't care if you're paying the taxes in South Africa or Australia, or whether that is just where you've got your ID. They just want the number. They want to know that you are a resident somewhere. A lot of the banks don't even look. Some do ask for a tax declaration, but some of them do not. We work with plenty of banks, maybe 20 banks, and depending on the profile of the client, now we pick 4 or 5 banks for each of them, and the mortgage application goes into those banks. Because everybody's different, even within the seafarers, everybody's different. Some people from England, some people from South Africa, even they're not European community residents. It's still different because of your currency.
Most banks these days will actually, but I prefer to use the word home rather than resident, because they're going to argue where your home is. So if you've got property in the country, that's where you call home. So if you're declaring tax in the UK, have a property here, here might be called home. And this is how far down it goes. They've got central banks of interest, which is family, wife, kids. Then they will go as far as UK. So if you've got a house in the UK and a house in Spain, your dog lives in Spain, that's where home is. That's how far they're arguing.
Was your hand going up? Would you like to come back?
Yes, I just had something to add to that. My own personal experience was having an account with Standard Bank Isle of Man, functioned perfectly for years. I'm a South African, and then mid-season I'm out at sea with my card's expiring, and my British chief engineer says, listen, when I come back from my rotation, I'll read your cards to send it to my home address. So I sent my banking card to his home address, and Standard Bank shut down my account and wanted me to provide a tax declaration form. And I phoned and I chatted to them, and so it was the minute I sent my card to a UK address, you know, as much as I explained the situation and why I'd done it, I can essentially use my card, but I can't make any transfers. They sort of locked it down.
That's mainly due to the fact that Isle of Man piggyback off the UK's licensing. So Isle of Man, even though they're an independent country, if you go to Brussels, there's no Isle of Man flag. They will rely on the UK legislation and rules. So as soon as you put the UK address down there, if you've not got a tax declaration, they have to basically close it.
Red flag.
Yeah.
Goes up.
And also, that was probably a lot to do with your protection as well, because you've made changes. If you'd actually said something to them first and said, can I send it? They'd have logged that on the system and it might have got around it.
I did. So I spoke to them on the phone to have my address changed, and I explained to the person on the phone that I wanted to send it to a friend in England, and it was all okay. And then it was literally, it actually took a couple of months for this to happen. So only 3 months later that I started getting emails, and even when I phoned them, people I reach on the unending phone call are a bit confused about what's happening. So there's a disconnect between the people I'm speaking to and what's actually happening online.
This is exactly why you should seek advice from a financial advisor, because the people you talk to in the bank, they're not advisors. They're just staff in the bank. They do not know tax rules or anything like that. So even though they might say it's okay, when it actually goes through the system, the person at the top will go, no. But they don't know that. Standard Bank got a very good reputation and they're usually very good and trying to be helpful, but if they don't know, they just don't know. So it's always good to get advice before making a change.
Yeah, see how you can fix that. Yeah, you need to see how you can fix it. If it's inconveniencing you, you need to tell them, you know, how can I sort this out? Banking's important.
Sandy, if I could ask you something else about the property angle and investing here. Obviously, as Estela, we work with Kingsburg a bit when we need crew accommodation, because obviously you have two hats in terms of property search and acquisition, management, and also crew support. So if there is our seafarers out there looking to buy an apartment, invariably they're not here very much, so they want to rent it out. Is that the sort of thing that you facilitate, set up for them to do? And what are again, if they're tax status, if they're not tax resident in Spain, what happens to this rental income? Because obviously Spain is funny about short-term, what's regarded as a long-term rental, a holiday rental. So there's an emotive issue around that. But how is that treated?
Well, declaring your rental income as a seafarer is basically the same as declaring a rental income if you are a non-resident. A British person living in England will becomes 2 months a year once you're renting out the rest of the year. There is a non-residence tax return every year. You can declare that. The rental income is normally tax declarable once a year on the yearly tax returns. It's not like your monthly payment, your quarterly tax returns. So that is normally done by a person who has an accountant or their historian, or in the lawyer's office in the tax department, which actually automatically does it. All their clients who bought property will automatically do the non-residence tax declaration once a year for them, and they do have a presumed tax income on the property, or you can actually declare what you're earning. You can need to talk to them about that to see which avenue you go down. If you are not renting it at all, you still need to pay the presumed income tax on the property. It's not a large amount, but the Spanish government presumes that every non-resident rents out the property they bought. So it's a small amount, but it still needs to be done every year. And if you're travelling all the time, it's always best to leave it automatically in the hands of your lawyer or your accountant to do that for you every year. And the rental income, if you declare that, which you should, then that's taxable. It's the same for everyone, 24% of the gross.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm kind of out of questions, so unless you have some more, or you have anything else to add that's now sprung to mind since I started talking, I think we're going to wrap the session. So I want to thank you for coming on today. I'd like to thank you for coming. I hope it was informative. Of course, the session is also recorded, so it's actually going out live to a global audience of about 3 people, I think. But importantly, it's available offline afterwards too, so that we have a few requests to people who are adrift currently and like to watch it back. So hopefully the sound is good, and if If we get any queries from anybody afterwards, obviously we'll pass them to you. In the meantime, I'd ask you to, if you have any questions directly or more private nature, then feel free to grab one of the panel right now. So let's wrap it up. It's the last day of the boat show. Hope you enjoy. Hope you've seen the last of the rain, and see you again next year, if not before. Thank you very much.